Some people in this country are very, very rich, but most of you are very, very poor. Skin! You know why? Because you're all lazy bastard!
Come on, baby, eat the rich, but the bite of the son of a bitch. Don't listen, don't you give me no switch. Come on, baby, and eat the rich. Come on, baby, and eat the rich. Come on, baby, eat the rich, but the bite of the son of a bitch. Don't listen, don't you give me no switch. Come on, baby, and eat the rich. Come on, baby, and eat the rich. Come on, honey, here's your supper. Come on, baby, fight that sucker.
For the majority of human history, the majority of the people weren't that bright. Most were duped into believing that certain people were either gods, or endowed by God or a god, to be greater than other humans. They would live lives of splendor, opulence, and impunity from justice, while the rest of us were more like their livestock or pets. We worked for them, our lives were sacrificed in toil, suffering, and squalor to provide them with said opulence. We lived and died at their command.
Well, I am king. Oh, king, eh? Very nice. And how'd you get that, eh? By exploiting the workers. By hanging on to outdated imperialist dogma which perpetuates the economic and social differences in our society. The Lady of the Lake, her arm clad in the purest shimmering samite, held aloft Excalibur from the bosom of the water, signifying by divine providence that I, Arthur, was to carry Excalibur. That is why I'm your king. Listen, strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate from the masses, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony. Be quiet! Oh, but you can't expect to wield supreme executive power just because some watery tart threw a sword at you. Shut up! I mean, if I went round saying I was an emperor, just because some moistened bint had lobbed a scimitar at me, they'd put me away.
You see, all animals, including humans, need to work to acquire what we need to live. We work to acquire our food, to create our shelters, and humans to create our clothing. Prior to civilization, we all worked together to farm, build our houses, and make our clothes. There's still some who live like this, but they were demonized as savages. At some point in time, a few learned that if they could get someone else to work for them, they wouldn't have to.
A Monday warrior, mean, mean stride. Today's Tom Sawyer, mean, mean pride.
You're working your head off, ain't you? Oh, yeah. Then what you doing? I feel sorry for you, Joe. You're sorry for me? Yeah. 'Cause you can't get what I get. What you get? Satisfaction from whitewashing. You get more than that. You get gratification. Gratification? Yeah, that's what you get. Hey, let me have a turn. Please, Tom. You don't know what you're asking, Joe. I gave you my glass stopper. Genuine crystal. It's pretty good, but I don't know. Just for a couple of legs. All right, just for a couple. That's all. Watch you don't slop none. What'd you give him to do your chores? What chores? He's doing your whitewashing, ain't he? I'm afraid you've got this all turned around. Joe, give me this. He paid you? Sure. Look at him having all that fun. I got 6 marbles. I done had some, but it's half good. Hey, watch you don't slop.
Over time, some learned that if they could get many to work for them, they not only didn't have to work, but could get rich to boot. Being ruled over by someone else who made you do their work for them with only food and shelter and clothes in return is called slavery. It assumed many different forms and taken on different names: serfdom, servitude, chattel slavery, indentured servant, debt bondage, bonded labor, forced labor, wage slavery, and exploitation. People were either flat out owned by other people, like livestock, and forced to work only for their food, clothes, and shelter, or they lived in corrupted societies where they had to work for only enough wages to afford food, clothes, and shelter. At least when owned by another, it behooved the owner to keep them healthy, or they would have to purchase a new slave, kind of like a farmer pays for a veterinarian to look after their plow horse. More recent slavery took the burden of the slave's health out of the slave owner's hand and let you become injured or die and then be replaced by another wage slave. It was a system of freedom that freed us from slavery and being ruled by others. You see, freedom in a group is tricky. You're free to do as you want as long as you don't impede on others' freedom. In a free society, you shouldn't be free to take away someone else's freedom, as it is in the case of slavery. But at this point in time, slavery was still alive and well.
Peasants feel you have no regard for them.
What? I have no regard for the peasants. They are my people. I am their sovereign. I love them. Pull! Drifting to the left.
What is the nature of this life of ours? Let us face it, our lives are miserable, laborious, and short. We are born, we are given just so much food as will keep the breath in our bodies, and those of us who are capable of it are forced to work to the last atom of our strength. No animal in England knows the meaning of happiness or leisure after he is a year old. No animal in England is free. The life of an animal is misery and slavery. That is the plain truth. But is this simply part of the order of nature? Is it because this land of ours is so poor that it cannot afford a decent life to those who dwell upon it? No, comrades. 1,000 times no. The soil of England is fertile. Its climate is good. It is capable of affording food in abundance to an enormously greater number of animals than now inhabit it. This single farm of ours would support 12 horses, 20 cows, hundreds of sheep, and all of them living in a comfort and a dignity that are now almost beyond our imagining. Why, then, do we continue in this miserable condition? Because nearly the whole of the produce of our labor is stolen from us by human beings. There, comrades, is the answer to all our problems. It is summed up in a single word: man. Man is the only real enemy we have. Remove man from the scene, and the root cause of hunger and overwork is abolished forever. Man, he sets them to work, he gives back to them the bare minimum that will prevent them from starving, and the rest he keeps for himself. Our labor tills the soil, our dung fertilizes it, and yet there is not one of us that owns more than his bare skin.
Around 2,500 years ago in Greece, however, a new social system emerged with the idea that people could rule themselves through a system called democracy. In theory, it reflected the will of the majority through voting over that of a small few or one. In reality, it was simply the rule of a larger group of wealthy as opposed to a small group of royals and nobles. It would be a long time before it was meant for all people. Aside from Greece and a few regions such as in the Native Americas, Scandinavia, India, and Eastern Europe, monarchs were still to rule most of the world, unhindered until about 200 years ago. It wasn't until 1755 that the first modern democratic constitution would be written and enacted in Corsica, where even women were allowed to vote. It was short-lived, but in America, a system that would not be short-lived appeared about 20 years later.